All right.
Now we are live. Hello, everyone. We are live. Okay, and I've got the awesome Nikhil from Shelf-Esteem with me, and we're going to talk all about the Matthew Corbett series from Robert McCammon. And yeah, Nikhil's got an awesome channel. You need to check him out. Wait, not just a booktuber. He's a composer. Specializes in book-to-movie adaptations. So you really need to check out his channel. It's kind of special. And yeah, how are you doing, Nikhil?
I'm doing great. How are you, Cliff? Thanks so much for having me on. It's just so nice to see you and chat with you again.
Yeah. Once again, I'm looking a little bit pasty. Not too bad this time. Just got to get this light right. That's all.
That's all. I feel like that's always. I feel like the lights also feel like they change all the time or something. Like I'm constantly having to readjust in here. I don't know what the deal is. Like no video looks quite the same. So
yeah, but that's fine.
Yeah,
I prefer the daylights, but yeah, it's a time difference. Late now, so yeah. Yeah, so we're going to talk Robert McCammon, and we're going to have a spoiler-free section first for all of those that haven't read the Matthew Corbett series. I'll talk a little bit about McCammon first and our impressions of the first three books. We read the first three books, but just in a non-spoilery way. And, you know, our thoughts about the characters and the settings and Robert McCammon's writing style and just all that good stuff. So, yeah. So what do you think about Robert McCammon as an author?
So, yeah, I was so pleasantly surprised by finding another author that I feel like rivals Stephen King in many ways, and also feels like you know, two sides of the same coin. Like I love Stephen King, as probably anyone who watches my channel knows, because I always talk about my shelf back here or on this side. That is all Stephen King related. So always keeping a Stephen King hardback or paperback close to me at all times. That's always very important. And I first discovered Robert McCammon on Mike's Book Reviews channel. He started reading Boy's Life, and he loves coming of age as well. And so I was very taken by that, by that idea. Oh, another author that writes in a style that is reminiscent of King, but is still doing his own thing entirely, and kind of came up around the same time. You know, that's, I feel like the 80s for horror was just kind of a golden period, you know?
It was.
A lot of iconic horror came out. I mean, if you think about even in films, but definitely in books. And so finding an author like that was really a pleasant surprise. And I started off with Boy's Life, which is not really quite horror. It's more of a coming of age story with some magical realism.
Mystery, thriller, that kind of
yeah. And I was just amazed. I was blown away. And I was like, okay, I've probably read his best book. So I'll try the next one, Swan Song. And then that blew me away again. I was like, "Who is this?"
You know
guy?
how I feel about Swan Song.
Yeah. Oh, we could probably have a whole video discussion on Swan Song itself. That's how good it is.
I think the difference between Stephen King and Robert McCammon. Yeah. And it's almost like Robert McCammon in the 70s, 80s. You know, that golden era. It's always in kind of in the shadow of Stephen King, and it might have had something to do with the output. You know, Stephen King wrote a lot more than Robert McCammon. Yeah. But yeah, it was such a surprise to discovering he's becoming one of my favorite authors. Number 2, actually, after Stephen King.
Yeah. I know. I feel very similar to you, Cliff. I think like I was thinking about why didn't this guy like pop off in the same way Stephen King did? I think you're right about the output. I also think it has to do with like iconic villains or monsters. Like if you think about Stephen King, like It already automatically puts him in a different category in terms of like the pop culture phenomenon, you know. Cujo, when there's like a rabid dog or something, you know, it's like, or like a dangerous dog, people are like, you know, Cujo's become almost in the popular lexicon now. And I could think of so many others. I mean, The Shining is like another pop culture thing. I think if more Robert McCammon books were adapted for the big screen, we might see more of a resurgence on his works. So I hope that happens at some point.
There's a lot of early works that I think there's a book called Stinger, and then there's They Thirst, which I think is a vampire book, which I'd love to read. So he's just such an amazing, talented author, and I've never read anything bad by him. I've read about 7 or 8 of his books now.
Yeah,
It's phenomenal. So
I think I might have read about 7 or 8 as well. I'm trying to think. Boy's Life, Swan Song, Stinger, Gone South, which was actually really cool.
I've got that. I haven't read that yet.
Oh yeah, it's great. It's got a bit of a thriller suspense feel, but it's also very absurd in a way that like you would think of, how King will do something completely off the wall in his books, in almost every book really, but he writes it so compelling, that you almost believe it. Like you can kind of suspend disbelief a little bit. And I feel like Robert McCammon does that really well, especially in that book. There's that, and then the Matthew Corbett novels, 3 of which we have read now together.
It's all about that, yeah.
Oh yeah. So,
and you should actually look up a book called Mine as well, which is like it's more like a thriller with horror elements, and it also has a terrifying villain. I think it's Mary Terror, who kidnaps this child. So it's like a chase novel, but she's brutal as well. Well, so you should check it out. Yeah.
Oh, I can't wait. Yeah, I actually have it on my shelf. I got a first edition hardback, I think on thriftbooks.com. If you've not checked out Thrift Books, or anyone here hasn't, like it's great. Yeah, you can find oftentimes used books at decent prices, and you just kind of keep looking to see when ones come up that are like much cheaper than other ones.
Is it a global company? Because here in South Africa, I'm not sure. We get like Take-A-Lot, Amazon. I don't know about Thrift Books. If it's an American company, it's probably going to cost a lot of money to import it. That's the problem.
Damn. Yeah. Darn.
Swan Song, I think cost my wife close to 700, 800 rand to import. That's like $70, $60.
Wow.
I can't remember, but that's because you can't get it here. So we had to actually. And that was my birthday present. So
wow.
It was crazy.
Wow. Yeah, that's absurd. That's like almost a special edition price at that point,
Exactly, yeah.
Wow.
What do you say about Robert McCammon's writing style? What makes him so enticing? Such a brilliant writer.
Oh, you might be able to shed better light on this, Cliff, than I can. I have a hard time articulating that. I think he makes every character nuanced. And he, how Stephen King can take even a boring character, like an old lady at a diner, and talk about that for 10 pages and make it compelling. I think that's my favorite part about both of those authors. And I keep referencing Stephen King because it's one people know more of. So it's like, if you like Stephen King, you'd probably like Robert McCammon for the same reason. Yeah. And I feel like
I think he's also brilliant with settings. And you'll see when we talk about the series here that he doesn't waste words with just painting these awesome settings. That you're living there with the characters. It's just special. And something, when I actually read a couple of interviews with the author, and to see about his writing process, like, does he have a plan? So like some writers have like an outline for a book. He doesn't. He starts and he just lets it build. What's the right word? Organically. The characters. He might have little setting markers, but he doesn't have an overall plan. He lets the story take him.
Interesting.
And he writes about what he would like to read. So
that's yet another parallel with Stephen King, because Stephen King also famously doesn't outline anything. So
they come to him.
I think they kind of let their imagination kind of run wild, and that's also why I think their choices can sometimes land with people and sometimes not, especially the endings and stuff like that. Like I feel like overall so far, I'm 7 for 7 on the Robert McCammon endings so far. If I was to pick any Stephen King books, I don't know I would necessarily say that. Like some of the endings land, some don't quite land. But you kind of enjoy being taken on a ride. It's like you trust the author. You know that they're going to give you characters that you fall in love with, or love to hate, or hate to love, or whatever you want to call it. But you kind of relinquish control. It's active surrender. This author is going to take me where they're going to go, and I'm in for the ride. Let's go, you know, to the weird, to the dark, to the twisted. Let's go.
Yeah. Okay. Talking about let's go. Let's see who's here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we got lots of people here. Oh, we've been jabbering on. Yeah. So we got Joseph Wilson Doe. What's up? What up?
Yo.
Yeah.
The Dawn.
My biggest fan.
Yay, Anita.
Amethyst Style. Hi,
Amethyst. Hey.
Then we got Constance Campbell.
Hey.
Hi. Hi everyone.
Isabel.
Hi, well.
Hey. Nice
And
to see
then
you.
and Amethyst says, I picked up Swan Song recently. Haven't read it yet, but I'm looking forward to it. Look, it's a monster, but it is, for me, almost a perfect horror novel, if not the perfect.
Yeah. I know this is a hot take.
Favorite book. It's my favorite book of all time.
Is it?
Yeah, number one. Number one.
Wow.
Boy's Life is number 4 or 5. Something like that.
Yeah. They're both on my top 10. You know, I mean, I was talking about like books I wish I could read for the first time again, and Swan Song is on there. Boy's Life is on there.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, my wife and I, we both love it. We were on holiday, and we both read it one after the other. And it's 1,100 pages long.
Oh, is it? Yeah.
Something like that. I don't know. I read it in 2 days.
Wow.
On holiday. And then, my wife was cooking. The only thing I stopped to do was eat. Occasionally swim in the ocean, that kind of thing. So what you're supposed to do when you're on holiday. The rest of the time I read this book. And then I gave it to my wife, and she finished it in 3 days, 4 days. So it's brilliant.
High praise. Yeah. I know this is a hot take, but I think like for me, I might like it more than The Stand, you know?
I do.
Yeah. Ooh.
All the books. That's good for secondhand books in the UK. And actually, we'll look up these places. World of Books. My wife will be taking notes.
Yeah. I love going to used bookstores all over the world. Like anywhere I go, I usually, instead of opting for like a souvenir from the place, I'll go to the local bookshop and support the local bookstore, you know? And it's really fun to do that. It's really fun.
The thing is, where I used to live in Cape Town, beautiful city.
Yeah.
They had a road, a famous street called Long Street. And along that long street, you'll find at least 7 or 8 or 9 bookstores, used bookstores, African bookstores. And but where we live right now, we got one. unless I drive for like 2 hours to Durban, which is not bad.
Yeah.
So we got one about 15 minutes drive away. Yeah, so let's see. They ship worldwide, apparently. Okay.
Hey, that's great.
South Africa. Yeah.
Good looking out. That's awesome.
Thanks, Amethyst. I'm going to look that up because I need that. Hey, friend. Bobby Vomit.
Good to see you.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to go back to full screen. The fun parts. Now, that's one other thing we wanted to look at with Robert McCammon. Now, this is interesting because, as we've spoken about, in his early years as an author, he wrote horror. The 80s, I think up until the 90s. And then he stopped writing, I think for almost a decade.
Yeah.
And the reason he stopped writing is that his final novels at that period were Boy's Life, and I think, what's the one you mentioned earlier? Gone South.
Gone South, yeah.
Gone South, yeah. Where he tried to deviate a bit from the horror genre. And then he had a manuscript for Speaks a Nightbird. First book we're going to talk about, or one of the books we're going to talk about. And the publishers rejected it. And they rejected him because they wanted his name on horror, nothing else. He's popular with horror. So he took a hiatus. Apparently it really depressed him. And he took time with his family. And eventually, I think it was 10 years later. I'm not sure. I've got the dates here. I think it was 1993 to 2002.
Wow.
Where he found a new publisher to publish Speaks a Nightbird. and then he started with the historical novels.
Wow.
But the interesting thing to know about these historical novels is that it's coming from the pen of someone who writes very good horror. So although it's historical fiction, people that enjoy horror will love the series. I didn't think I would love historical fiction as much as I love this particular series. I'm totally in love with it's just such an awesome character. And yes, it's like kind of a, people will say, oh, well, it's not horror, so I'm not going to read it. Anything this man writes is laced with kind of dark themes and horror and characters that, would you agree with that?
100% agree. And he's always been a character first author, and I feel like that's the through line for any genre he tackles. It's like that's what when there's an author who does compelling characters well, I really truly believe that they can tackle genres that people wouldn't expect them to tackle and also make it palatable for people who wouldn't normally read those genres. I think that's what makes Robert McCammon one of the special ones. And for me, I only discovered historical fiction about a year ago when I read Shogun by James Clavell. And I loved it. And I was like, wow, I got to read more historical fiction. So I was already primed for wanting to read this. But I will say that the 1700s in American history, or the late 1600s, kind of when the first book takes place, 1699, wasn't very interesting to me to want to read. And I was a little bit trepidatious, like, oh, a 10-book series based on a time period that's not necessarily like my go-to, that I'm like, oh, I really want to get it. But even for that, like, I'm fully invested, I'm like, oh, 10 books, I wish it was longer, I really do. Yeah.
And he himself admits, that's one thing that sort of turns a lot of people off from historical fiction, is that there's just too much. It's almost like an info dump, and that it slows everything down. Where he himself admits is, he does not, his work is not totally historically accurate. But I think readers will appreciate that because it doesn't slow down the narrative with unnecessary facts and information. He tells the story while at the same time making you feel like you in that time. Kind of that century in colonial America. So he's got a special gift with that. And so if you're thinking of reading it and you're worried about all the historical facts and all that, don't. He is a magician in terms of storytelling, and he brings in just enough to make you feel like you're living in that time. And you feel that time period, right?
That's what I was going to say is like, I feel like, you think about the medical advancements of the time is like one particular case in point, especially in the first book. And you just see how archaic things were or what the common belief was back in the day. So you get enough of that historical fact that's imbued into the words, into the story. But it doesn't take you out of the story. It's part of the story. So those things are at least historically accurate. It might not be like every place or character is historically accurate or whatever, but it doesn't need to be because it, that, like you said, Cliff, would detract from the story. And so he's more about characters and how can we like develop these across these novels. So that's one thing I just love. I'm a McCammon maniac,
Let's just have a look at these 3 stories and rate them. Just we sort of talked about our general feeling about the series as a whole. I mean, it's magnificent. But drawn into the time period, you're drawn into the characters. The writing is gorgeous, but it's just rate without spoiling anything. We're still spoiler-free territory now. How do you rate? Let's say from 3rd, 2nd, and 1st. How would you rate the books? And give me a reason, but without like kind of giving too much.
Okay. This is a hard one. I was actually.
And I know we're different on this.
Yeah. Well, that's the beauty of this stuff is like you can love something and have a different perspective. That's why it's so much fun to have these discussions too. I think. But I think if I had to rate them 3, 2, 1, I think the hardest part actually is between 2 and 1. I think for me, the third one, the third place one would be probably book 2, Queen of Bedlam. And you know where I'm going to go for that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I love that book. I think the world expands out so suddenly from the first book that there's a lot more to take in. Like there's varying plot lines and stuff, whereas the first book and the third book feel more very central plot focused.
Yeah.
And so I think for me it was a little bit more to juggle at that point on the second book. I loved the ending of it, though. It might be my favorite ending of any Robert McCammon book. Or of any Matthew Corbett book. So it's hard to say that it would be third, but the third of a McCammon book out of 3 is already a banger. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say the second one. Okay, I think it's very close. It's almost a tie. I would say that maybe the second one is Mr. Slaughter. I thought that the villain in this was one of the scariest and most compelling villains I've ever.
We're going to talk about him in detail later because he was freaking people. Let me just show an image of this guy. It's a bit like me. Probably can't see that. Pirate, yeah. But he is just insane.
And there's certain villains that have when they have a lot of nuance, it can be very compelling to read, and it's less so usually when they're a bit more one-dimensional. I felt like Mr. Slaughter was a little bit more one-dimensional as a whole, but it was so compelling to read because of the way Robert McCammon wrote him. I don't know, usually for me that wouldn't be as compelling as a villain with a more of a backstory or nuance or whatever. But there's something about this one that just
he's basically reason for existence. You talk about one dimension, is that he's against all life. He's happy to destroy, maim, rape, kill. He has no interest in other people at all. He's completely psychotic, really, and he takes pleasure in killing. And there's kind of in this book there are plenty of trigger warnings.
Yeah.
And in fact, what I have to say about this book is that I saw reviews on Goodreads, people that loved the first 2 books, and they come to the third book and they hate it because it's such a departure from the kind of historical novels that you get in the first 2 books, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now suddenly you got this almost like a flat out kind of manhunt horror book with this villain worse than Hannibal Lecter. It's like this guy is insane. And there's trigger warning you have to check for this book. It's not easy reading. It's not easy. There's one scene, with that family.
It makes you angry, like it makes your blood boil kind of thing, I will say I felt it was on the tip of my tongue. Sometimes I lose my train of thought. I don't know. It'll probably come back to me at some point. But
your first
yes, I was gonna say he's like a mixture of Hannibal Lecter in terms of how calculating he is and how like 2 steps ahead of everyone he is, and then also
super intelligent. You can read people. You can read people like a book.
But then he also has the Joker style nihilism, like Heath Ledger's Joker, kind of from Dark Knight vibes.
It's like that.
Yeah. Great.
Blowing up hospitals, things like that.
Yeah. And then the first one, the first book I would say is first place, but narrowly so. I thought that the endings for both of them were kind of on par for me. I think Mr. Slaughter and the Speaks the Nightbird, but the way they introduce Matthew Corbett, where he's at, emotionally, spiritually, and kind of career-wise at that point, the town, the setting comes to life because it's contained in a way that the other 2 books aren't. And I don't know, there's just something about that one where you feel I don't want to say too much about it in case we want to keep it spoiler free now, but like the central plot arc of it is so compelling, and Matthew's interactions with that character that it's affecting are just so interesting. I would say that's like far and away one of my favorite historical fiction books now. I don't know. How about you? What's your rank?
Yeah, we're going opposite direction now.
I love it.
But saying that, remember we talked about, I love all of them. But the one I gave a 4-star was Speaks the Nightbird. But the reason, and this is kind of a personal thing, as an English teacher, I taught The Crucible.
Oh, yeah.
And it was probably the least favorite book that I've ever taught. And it's about the Salem witchcraft trials and, all that kind of stuff. And I just didn't enjoy the beginning of Speaks the Nightbird with the witchcraft. It's just a personal thing. It's just that. I'm not interested in that. But it got to the point with his writing and with the characters and the town, it became a lot more interesting the further that I read.
It's funny you mentioned The Crucible, by the way, because that was the same feeling for me, like reading Crucible in high school. I liked the story enough and stuff, but the setting just didn't grab me, and then I just assumed that time period was not for me, but yeah, like you're saying, Robert McCammon makes it happen. So
yeah, but look, I mean, if I reread it, it might be 5 stars. It's that good. It's still bloody good. Second place, you can guess, Mr. Slaughter. It was brilliant. I gave it 5 stars, but there was a problem that I had that we're going to go into later with Matthew's decision making, and his personality seemed off compared to the first 2 books. But I don't want to say anything because it'll get into spoilers.
Yeah.
Then I'll go to number 1, and then we'll head into more spoiler territory. But yeah, there was something off about that. But then the rest of the book was such a wild ride. I had to give it 5 stars. No, that. And the first book, Queen of Bedlam, it's probably in my top 10 horror right now. I loved the complexity. I loved the setting. I know you said you liked the focus setting of the town, Fontaine, Royal Fontaine.
Fount Royal, yeah.
Fount Royal, sorry, yeah.
No.
And that kind of that setting that was almost like, I loved Queen of Bedlam. Kind of in New York, as it's finding itself. It's still like a town, like a city. The complexity of all the characters, just so interesting. And I love the fact, even though there were a lot of plot threads, I was never bored. So I love the characters. And then, like you say, the ending. Wow. And the story goes in a direction. I'm not giving any spoilers away. It goes in a direction you least expect.
Yeah.
And brings in, and we're going to talk about this later, brings in stuff that you just you don't think it's going to go there. And it goes there. And it was just magnificent. So, yeah. And I think it's one of the best endings of any story that I've read before.
Yeah.
2 or 3 chapters there, just like, it's like a white knuckle ride, right?
Huh?
Yeah, it's like a white knuckle ride, like a.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And the implications of that ending also make you feel white knuckled afterwards. And
because what's going to happen? And it's just the evolution of his character. But I think we should actually move to kind of a spoiler territory. But we're going to talk more about Matthew Corbett as a character. So if you want to hear about him as a character, you can still, stay here. But what we want to do is we want to look at different character traits like personality, physical ability, all these things, and give examples from some of the books of how he develops and his character arc. And I think that's a good way to go through all 3 books, because we're not reviewing one book here. We're doing his character arc, Matthew Corbett, in the series. Right? So, I mean, first of all, with you, let's talk about his physical capability. I mean, he's a clerk at the beginning. He's 20 years old. He's a virgin. Didn't have anything to do with it, but kind of does later on. But he's not exactly, a tough guy, is he?
Yeah. Right. His power is here. His power is in deduction. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's in determination. Mm-hmm. He's stubborn.
Yeah.
He's stubborn. He puts
people
himself
annoy people to the ends of the earth to find out information.
And he does get himself in big trouble often.
Oh yeah.
Totally. I mean, if you could argue that even at the beginning in Speaks the Nightbird, this is a spoiler. Kind of gets into a fight with a bear, and he gets a bit of. But I would say that's dumb luck more than anything. And any time he gets into physical conflict, kind of almost like he has to try and avoid damage, and doing so he survives. he's not exactly in the first book. Yeah. How does that change?
Yeah, I feel like so do you want me to talk about more of the
Yeah, just talk about the physical, like let's talk about in the second book where he starts to get some training.
Yeah.
Pretty useless, and then
So I feel like two things happen, and this kind of ties into book 3, but it's not really a spoiler in terms of any plot related things. But I think two things regarding his physicality is, one, his fighting ability, his training ability, as he starts to kind of train and develop his fighting ability. The second part of it was his self-perception of him, like his own self-awareness and self-perception. Is, he starts wanting to wear nicer clothes and kind of like look the part of the person that he wants to be. And and it's like, it becomes, how far do you take that before it becomes a hindrance, And I think that's just Matthew Corbett in general is a character. He strikes me as someone who's like, anything he chooses to do, he's going to go all the way. If he's doing this training, he's like going for it. If he's trying to look the part, he's going to go all the way, If he wants to annoy people to death to find information to solve a case or something like that, he's gonna go for it. I feel like half the first book is one particular character saying like, "Why are you so annoying, Matthew? Why can't you just leave it alone?" And he's like, "I can't."
Yeah. No, he's persistent. He's persistent.
Yeah.
Stubborn. And he's a pain in the ass for some people. That's for sure. Let's talk about his personality, and it's kind of almost like his belief system at the beginning. I would say that he's very naive. He's kind of innocent. He believes in good and evil, right? Yeah. And he has a perception that mankind is basically good, or that things can be solved. He sees himself as a good person, that he's doing the right thing, and he's always going to do the right thing. And this changes. This changes a lot. I mean, first of all, in the second, he gets more sense of himself in the second book. Kind of when he's when he takes down that organization at the end of the book. Not handedly, but But then in the third book, I have a big problem with the first part of the third book, because you got this guy who's moral, he's righteous, and then in the third book, right at the beginning, you see him. He's wearing these new clothes. He's now become materialistic. He's greedy, and he wants to keep the money that he's discovered. And then he just makes the most stupid decisions, moral decisions that end up haunting him, and changing who he is as a person. The ideas of right and wrong and black and white. No, the world is grey. It's full of grey areas and full of ambiguity. And I found that kind of making a deal with the devil scene, basically. And the fact that he kept wanting to say something, but he never spoke up. It's a great house, right? And it will be interesting to see how this affects into the rest of the books.
I agree.
It's like a shame. For book 3, it was like a shame for him. And he doesn't know how to live with himself. How's he going to come out of that?
Yeah, you're right. I feel the same way. I think interestingly enough, I feel like his naivete is probably what helped him in the first book, because the other people were so experienced at figuring out who is innocent and who's guilty that they already brought their preconceived notions to the table. Whereas, Matthew Corbett could look at Rachel's character, I'll just say that, and say, hey, maybe not as all as it seems, and that naivete probably helped him a lot, and with his power of deduction and persistence and all that. I kind of, I felt, I actually kind of liked where his character ended up in book 3, only because we had seen his naivete already, and it stood to reason that he would have all this life experience from those first two books and then moving to New York and everything. And suddenly he gets this newfound fame. And I could just imagine what that does to a person, you know, especially at that time when fame was not really a thing to come by. You know, it's not like a, you know, you think about.
You don't think it was quite a kind of a monumental shift? I mean, if you look at him, even at the end of book 2, you know, and you see him in the beginning of book 3, strutting around like a peacock. And he's broke. He spent all his money on clothes. That turnaround is a little bit too much for me.
Yeah.
You
but
know,
I wonder about that because
5 stars.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I was gonna say I forget now how much time elapses between book 2 and book 3. I think I remember being like a year or something.
Stop right there.
Yeah.
Stop right there. You need to go to Robert McCammon's website.
Okay.
And you need to look up the short story that he wrote, and it's free, and it tells us of the time between book 2 and book 3.
Really? Oh, that's cool.
And there's a supernatural stuff that happens in the story, and it's called. I'm gonna give it to you.
Oh, thanks.
Night Ride, and it is awesome. It's awesome. It's kind of a long short story.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's got it for free on his website.
Awesome.
And it's a sort of a standalone, but it takes place between second and third book.
Oh, that's great. So, okay.
People, you can forget
that. Thanks. Yeah, thanks for letting me know. That's awesome. Yeah, maybe that's also you know, changed your perception of how jarring you felt that third book was. You know, for me, I didn't get a chance to read that story yet, so maybe for me it felt more natural. Or, you know, I always think about, have you ever seen the Rocky movies?
Yeah.
So you know the beginning of Rocky 3, he's like, you know, it's like the other guy's like training in this like dungeon, and then Rocky's just like doing like MasterCard commercials and stuff, and like totally selling out and like losing his edge and everything. And I kind of think of it that way. Matthew Corbett's like newfound fame. You know, he is well liked, and he's like, oh, I guess I got to act the part. And I also think like for someone like that who in some ways doesn't care about what anyone thinks except for the truth, it's interesting to see someone like that given to temptation, because it kind of proves that as humans we are all fallible. Because in the second book he has such moral scruples, like even in the house of ill repute, let's say. You know, and
I just want to talk. We just want to talk.
Exactly. So it's just kind of like at every point up till then, we saw him being like have almost unrealistic expectations of what moral scruples should be. And so it was nice to kind of see that, you know, even he's fallible. Like that's it kind of brings a different dimension to the character. But that's just my thought, you know. I don't know.
It's true. But consequences of his actions and his thing are gonna haunt him. I'm interested to see how that plays out, you know, because it's shame in him now, and now his actions are to try and make things right. But he's still going to be haunted by what he did. But maybe he'll learn from it. But at the same time, the body count. Okay, let's have a look quickly. Let's just see.
Oh, a lot of comments.
Where are they? Whoa. Hungry Vomit says, Speaks Nightbird was so good. Made me realize I'm very interested in Hey, let's just say the difference between the first 2 books and the third book. Because the third book did take a huge kind of deviation. You couldn't read, there wasn't a mystery involved. There wasn't this kind of intricate mystery involved. Concentration on a group of characters, you know, different plot threads. It was very streamlined and horrifying, and Great to the syrupy. How's it, Matt?
Hey,
Matt.
Good to see you.
Different? You think you're not different?
Love it.
I hope you both do well. I'm about to jump off to finish my essay for my government class.
Thanks for taking the time.
Thanks, mate. Dang, that gets me super excited to continue with the series.
It's great. You'll love it. You really will.
You really will love it. Good luck on the essay. Thank you. Hey, Mark.
Hey.
Hey, dudes, can't stay apart from the facts that I've still not read any Robert McCammon. Island of McCammon. Easter. Have a great show.
Happy Easter.
You happy Easter. And you must pick up Robert McCammon. You'll love it. Yeah. Okay, good. Okay, peace and love, my friends. Happy Easter. Stopping by to say hello. Move the like button. Thanks, Nicole.
Good to see you.
Give that like button a boop, everyone. Hi, Nicole. And some of Matthew's decision-making and moral decision-making frustrated me in Speaks the Nightbird.
Yeah.
But also fits his character, being younger and more naive. Yeah.
I think he frustrated a lot of people, including the characters in the novel.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. But yeah, this, like you said, he's young, naive, he's innocent in the first book. And he learns some really hard lessons in the second and third book.
Yeah.
And he has to really stand up. And he faces stuff that is a lot more challenging.
Yeah.
Complex.
100%. The stakes are way higher.
Right? The stakes are way higher. I remember that Great House, a friend of his, the one who trains him, it's Great House.
Great House, yeah.
I remember he says something in one of the novels that, like, you are going to face things that are going to come with the inch of your life. You have to make decisions. I can't remember what he said. It was kind of profound.
Yeah. I know which quote you're talking about, and I can't quite remember it.
Yeah, I can't remember the quote, but it's basically like, your life, you're going to get to the darkest point where you could be snuffed out. You're going to have to make decisions, and you're going to have to. I think that's when they're having fencing lessons, when he's training him, right?
That's right. Yep.
You have to snap out of. You have to actually train him. You have to get yourself right and focused. And he does become a lot more focused in the second book. And maybe the fact that he found the gold and he had a part in bringing that, and also the fact that that guy who writes a newspaper for the town, made him like a local hero. All of that got to his head.
Totally.
So
the Daily Rag or whatever, right?
The Daily Rag.
Yeah.
Okay, so hang on. Are we going to leave it there? And what else have I got here? Hang on.
You're so organized, Cliff. You're so organized.
I have to be. You could just chime in whenever you want with anything you want to say. Huh?
Oh, yeah, no problem.
Okay. I got relationships. I don't know about relationships there. I think we covered pretty much everything. I mean, his personality, his stubborn, determined, his decision-making, his belief system in right and wrong. I think that's an important thing, especially in the first book.
Yeah.
Because he has this idea that people are good, and there's right and there's wrong, and he's going to go for justice no matter what.
I think that's why Mr. Slaughter rattles him so much. And he doesn't quite know how to handle someone like that because it defies all convention. If somebody doesn't subscribe to the same moral code as society does, how does one deal with that? Especially if one subscribes to that same moral code.
Yeah, it's almost like he's got a supernatural ability.
Yeah,
it requires a little bit of suspension of disbelief. It's almost like he's just this man monster.
Yeah.
Like a superhuman villain, sort of. Yeah, and I think there's a lot of times in this book where you have to have a bit of suspension of disbelief to what's going on. I'd actually love to talk about one of the other villains in that book. Mrs. Sausage. Miss
such as something sausages or whatever.
Sausages. Yeah. That was kind of gross.
Yeah. So I guess since we're heading into, are we heading into full spoilers? Would you say now, or would you say?
Yeah. No, we are. We've been in full full spoilers a while.
Okay, yeah. I just want to make sure.
That's probably why people are saying goodbye to us now.
Yeah, exactly. fair point. But yeah, no, I think for me personally, that villain it diluted it a little bit for me. And I'll tell you why. I love the stuff with Mr. Slaughter, and I think the idea of him being almost superhuman because of not only his reactivity, his fighting ability, his ability to think quickly, his calculation ability,
ability to people and to respond, like think ahead.
100%.
Yeah.
But then in the face of that Miss Such's sausages, whatever her name is,
sausages.
Yeah, it's like try to say that 10 times fast.
Just go dig a new grave.
yeah, exactly. So I thought that was a really cool villain on its own. I think it could have been a really cool villain in another book in a way. And I felt like that suddenly coming in at the end, I see how it tied in and it made sense and everything. But even Mr. Slaughter in reference to her was a bit more subdued. And you saw kind of the chink in the armor, which was cool.
Yeah.
But it seemed so sudden because all the way up till then he was like infallible, and then suddenly he kind of comes across as more meek in that situation. So for me, that I was like, I would have liked to actually see Miss Such's sausages in another book or something, or even a side story could have been cool, you know.
But it's interesting way they tie it in together. You know the story of I've got to remember this now. The story of Sweeney Todd. The mad thing. And you know that Sweeney Todd would kill the victims, and then he had an accomplice that would cut them up and make meat pies.
I actually didn't know about the meat pies.
Well, there you go. So Sweeney Todd was a barber from whatever street. To slice a thing, and then deposit the bodies, and then his accomplice would make meat pie. So that made it tie in quite nicely with it. I think that's maybe why he did it. Yeah. But I agree that it would have been better in another book, because in this book the whole thing was about Mr. Slaughter.
Yeah. And I think it would have been cool to see like a showdown that let Matthew overpower Mr. Slaughter from a different angle, like from what Matthew does best. You know, Matthew's power of deduction and his mental will, and like his ability to use his moral compass to maybe even in Mr. Slaughter's like, you know, latter moments, kind of make him realize like, oh crap, like I'm being bested by someone. You know what I mean? I think that
but maybe McCammon did this on purpose, because he talked about his moral compass and he's going into unknown territory with this creature. And so he has to use physical force, or he has to do it the way he's doing it. I remember he's completely worn out. I don't know. So I like the way you think, but I think, like I said before, he's going to be put in situations that he's not comfortable in. It's going to be taken to the edge over and over again. And I can imagine it's just the beginning of the series. It's going to be awesome books to come. But, and I mean, Professor Fell. I want to know more about Professor Fell and that organization, that crime syndicate.
Me too. I mean, when we first kind of got introduced to his name was, I think, in the second book. And you kind of think like, oh, maybe it's just some guy who has a vendetta against these people and is kind of trying to come after them and is able to do so, you know, even kind of figure out where people might be. But that he almost felt like a Mr. Slaughter type in that sense, that he's one person, you know? But then even Mr. Slaughter said like, you know, I'm just doing what my employer is telling me to do or whatever. And then you start to realize that the world is so much larger. And I love that aspect. Like, I think about, have you ever heard of this series called the Dresden Files?
I've heard of them. I've never read it.
So the first two books are more like mystery of the week kind of a thing, more contained. And then the third book is where it starts to open up into a larger world, and you start to realize there's bigger forces at play. And it kind of reminded me of that aspect of it, and I kind of love that. I'm actually very excited, because I think if it was a self-contained story every book, it would get old fast.
Yeah.
So the fact
I think that's also why I think the first book is my least favorite, because he actually wrote it as a standalone. He wasn't going to carry on with the series, so he wrote it as a standalone.
Interesting.
But then he fell in love with the character so much, he said, "No, I've got to keep writing this character." And it's like you say, in the second book and the third book, it does expand the world.
Yeah.
Not just literally with New York, 5,000 people living there, kind of finding itself from this tiny little town.
Yeah.
Just dirt and mud and grime. Not even a town yet, just settler.
Right.
The people that are paranoid. But it expands, and I like that expansion, especially in the second book. I liked the setting of New York. I liked the characters, although some of them annoyed me. The cross-dressing minister. No, the cross-dressing. What was he? He was
I forget his name too.
Yeah, I'm terrible. There's so many characters, you can't remember all their names. But yeah, he was a bit annoying.
Yeah.
But the majority of the characters I found really interesting.
Yeah, even if they are annoying, they're interesting. They're like deliberately annoying. You think about what's the name of the head of Fount Royal in the first book? I always forget these names.
Oh, that big guy that huge guy.
The guy who was
he was a mayor or something.
Yeah,
he was
mayor.
And he wanted to get rid of the witch as soon as possible, because it was economically viable for him to start this town, and the witch was standing in the way.
To bend the truth to do that. Yeah.
And then he realizes he's mistaken, but
I think even annoying characters like that, they have their purpose. Yes. And it's like it may feel one-dimensionally so. It's these characters where the antagonists sometimes they're not one-dimensional characters because they're richly done the way Robert McCammon can do, but they're less nuanced, that they're like have all these complexities about them that make you empathize with them in this way or that way. It's a little bit less of that, I feel, than maybe some modern novels, I would say. But it's so richly explored anyways that it doesn't matter. And it's perfectly placed within that world.
Yes, yeah. I mean, when I say irritating characters, I don't mean that they're terrible characters. Just the ones that I found irritated when I was reading them on the page. Yeah.
Mission accomplished,
Mission accomplished. I'm trying to think of other characters to talk about. Are there any other villains you want to talk about?
Villains?
You think about it, Mr. Slaughter. Just like the ultimate villain.
Yeah. Well, I guess we could probably move on to Mr. Slaughter, because I feel like he was his relentlessness of the way he pursued gratification at the expense of other people. Like, was just such a formidable villain for Matthew Corbett.
It's not just formidable. I mean, he was just like this force.
Yeah, he was a force.
And I remember the backstory that he spoke about. He told a story to the dog and the young guy. I like that young man as well, and the older guy, the minister. Yeah. And he supposedly talks about himself, that he's with his father and they're trapped in a mine and can't get out, and what he has to do to survive, and he does it, no problem. Eat his father.
Yeah.
Right? Remember that scene?
Yep.
Yeah. It just shows he's willing to do anything, and I think from that moment on, there's just something about this villain.
Here's one thing I was thinking about when it came to that story too, is if it's true, that's terrifying. If it's not true, if he just made it up, that's also terrifying.
That's also terrifying. Yeah.
Because he's totally unhinged then.
Yeah. Just playing with it.
Yeah.
And
it's kind of like I think about, again, I keep referencing the Joker from The Dark Knight, but you know how like in a couple of the scenes he will be like, did I ever tell you how I got this scar? and he'll make up a completely different story every time, you know.
So he's just messing with your mind.
It could be messing with your mind, you know, or it could be real, and either way, it's terrible. Not ideal.
Do you have any favorite characters? Like, not favorite characters, like favorite scenes from each of the 3 books?
Ooh, that is a tough one. Okay,
some obvious ones, but you first.
Oh, okay, I was gonna say for the first book, I think my favorite scene was where the whole town is going to try to burn the witch at the stake, Rachel, and like that whole what was that? What's that guy's name? Jeremiah something.
Oh no, yeah, he wants to take her for his own purposes.
That's right. Yeah. And but that whole scene of the mob trying to go over there and like burn her at the stake, and like Matthew trying to stop them, and then I forget who goes in and kind of is able to quell that whole mob.
That's Matthew is a clerk. The magistrate's still up and about.
Yeah.
The magistrate's still up and about. I think he comes in and
that's right. Yep.
Yeah. I think let's go one at a time. Yeah. So my favorite, I love that whole weird mystical thing at the end where he goes and gets a bear, gets taken to Native Americans.
Yep.
That whole thing, and to discover what happens to that guy at the very beginning of the book.
Yeah. Horrible. Yeah.
Horrible. But I love that whole sequence. I just enjoyed that. I like the complete break from that mud hole.
Yeah.
I was getting sick of. Sorry.
Yeah.
To go to a totally different direction. Yeah. I loved it. It was great. Yeah.
That's great. That's a great choice.
Yeah.
I think for the second book, probably my favorite was the ending. You know.
Yeah.
The whole blood card and.
Same. And that those birds of prey, those hawks.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything else more effective that I've read recently than that scene. And also the fight he has with that sword master or whatever.
Yeah.
Just pure survival, just like but that whole ending.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. And I also found the scene where that beautiful villain takes him to
right.
And they have that ridiculous dinner party.
That's right.
Absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
I like that scene as well.
Yeah. That was great. Yeah. There's so many things that happen in that book actually that it's I almost forgot. Yeah, that was a fantastic scene as well. I would say for the third book, I think my favorite scene would probably be the march towards that box of gold coins. You know, where Great House and Matthew Corbett and Mr. Slaughter, like Mr. Slaughter's like, oh, if you go over here, I'll give you this gold, you know, blah, blah, blah. And just let me go free.
Terrible decision making. Terrible decision making for both of them.
So I love that
for a while I thought, what am I reading now? This is stupid.
Yeah.
Then off that.
Frustrating for very different reasons.
Yeah.
But I love that scene because you could feel this anticipation just building as they're walking, you know? And you just know something's going to happen. It's like a sense of dread. But you can't look away, you know? I just love that anticipation that he builds. That's something he does in common with Stephen King, I think, is like, you kind of know where it's going to go, but the journey there, it just feels
so worth it.
Yeah. How about you?
I'm trying to think, and this is not my favorite scene, but it's the only scene that stands out in my head.
Yeah.
It's that absolutely depraved scene with that family.
Yeah.
And the rape afterwards. I'm just trying to think of around that now.
Yeah.
But I think, I know you don't like the other characters as much as I do with the sausages, but I think when he's hiding in the cellar, and then he has to fight off that woman, and then he takes that information, his name is on it. I like that. I also liked what's the guy's name on the American Native American that was a bit loose.
Oh, yeah.
He was insane. From Two Worlds, something Two Worlds. Or yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about.
I loved him as like a kind of taking Matthew off and kind of
Walker?
looking after him. Yeah.
Was it Walker?
Walker of Two Worlds. Yeah. So I loved that whole sequence as well.
That was great. Yeah.
That stuff was cool.
That also that scene with the mother-daughter and Mr. Slaughter and like their brave sacrifice to try to help.
Yeah. When he's crossing the bridge, when he's crossing the log.
Yeah. God.
I think the mother. That was one of the most heartbreaking things from the whole book.
Yeah.
What happens you suffer trauma that
brutal.
You just brutal. You hurt yourself. You've got to find a safe space, and you're no longer in touch with reality.
Yeah.
Absolutely brutal. Yeah.
That was so hard to read.
Yeah.
I kind of made I made a mistake because I was reading Mr. Slaughter, and then I randomly picked up. I know this is a side tangent, but it will make sense in the context of this. Is I was reading Mr. Slaughter, and then I randomly picked up Jack Ketchum's The Girl Next Door.
Ooh, yeah.
Not a good combination, let me tell you. Anybody watching, please do not do that to yourself.
I haven't read The Girl Next Door yet. Don't want to. No,
it is like an entire book of what that one scene was in Mr. Slaughter.
Yeah. Don't go there.
Yeah. Don't do it. Think happy thoughts, Think
happy thoughts, yeah. No,
but yeah, no, I think Robert McCammon, the way he writes these scenes are just so you're in it with those characters, and he's brilliant.
He's brilliant. Yeah. Should we just see if anyone else has got some?
Yeah.
I got a few more.
Nice.
I'll Vomit. I've only read the first book, so I probably have to run. Looking forward to coming back. Yeah, you can always save this video, and when you finish the next two, come at the end of the month or whatever, and come watch.
Yeah, that's what I do oftentimes. Is like I'll just save to watch later on like a playlist or something, and then I'll just go through as I finish reading.
Yay! Anyways, appreciate it. Wow, listen.
What movie are they watching?
Grandkids watching a movie. Had to watch episode 6 of Wheel of Time.
Oh,
the song, Nikhil.
That's awesome! Thanks so much. I'm so glad you liked it.
Yeah, it's on Spotify. Hey?
It's on Spotify. Yeah.
So I'm just typing the name of the song and then
Yeah, it's called The Hills of Tanchico.
I haven't even watched it yet. Sorry. I haven't seen the Wheels of Time, so
yeah. It's very sea shanty like. Hey, Alicia.
How's it, Alicia? Yo. That's me doing it.
That's right. Yeah. Good to see you all.
1 or 2. Okay.
Oh, nice.
That's a nice animated movie, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I have
awesome.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I suppose we're coming to like final thoughts here. Any final thoughts?
Gosh, I'm very, kind of like what you said. I'm very excited about what book 4 is going to hold, because especially the way Mr. Slaughter ended. It's like in the first 2 books, Matthew Corbett came out with some scars. Yeah. And he had, a little bit of the sword of Damocles hanging over his head after the end of the second book. But he still had his own kind of moral compass was what grounded him. And I think the third book made him realize he can't even trust his moral compass anymore. Yeah. I could imagine that's where his character would go, because it's like, that must be so rattling that you think you know yourself the whole time. And then you realize, there's more complexity to your own self. Do you know yourself as much as you think you did? And that is a coming of age story in itself. I think a lot of people go through that rite of passage. But I think to rediscover himself is going to be a big part of the next one. So I'm very excited about that aspect of it. The insular.
I agree with you. I mean, like going into the third book, I was irritated at first with the bad decision making, and the fact they made such poor decisions, and the fact that he's really going to have to live with this. But then I thought about it a bit more, and the reason I actually look back and I love the book, because he has to live with those decisions now. And he has to find some kind of moral compass, or he's going to have to look at the world in a different way and look at himself in a different way, grow and learn. I see what you're saying with that.
I think also I get the feeling he's going to blame himself a lot because of his moral character. And at the same time, he couldn't have foreseen that it would have gone into such dark territory as well. So it's going to be him trying to figure out how to reconcile those two things. And also it's like with the whole Professor Fell kind of arc that seems to be like it's going to take more of the story. It'll be also interesting is how his, if he ever interacts with this person, how that might go, because he's not quite as infallible as he thought he was, which makes him more human, at the end of the day.
Absolutely. I just want to say my last thought. Don't forget this short story.
Yes,
absolutely. You're going to love it. You must write it down. It's called
Night
Ride. So all you do is you go to Robert McCammon's website.
Yeah.
And you type out Night Ride, free story.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I'll read it this weekend.
It's really, really good. And it's the only story so far that brings in kind of the supernatural.
Oh, that's interesting.
So very interesting. Very
cool.
Very interesting.
Would you say that it was it gave more context to book 3 or anything? Or do you think it was more of a standalone?
No, it's a standalone. It's a standalone, but it's a lot of fun.
Oh, that's great.
It's the sort of thing that I'm not sure if it brings in more context to book 3. No, I don't think so.
No. Okay.
Very much a standalone,
Yeah. But I'm excited to check it out. Yeah, thanks for letting me know.
Yeah. Let's say cheers to the folk. I just want to see if there's anyone else. Nope. I think we're alone now.
Too many spoilers, too little time,
Too many spoilers. Okay, but anyone who is watching, I have to say thank you very much for tuning in. This was a lovely chat.
This was wonderful.
And I think it is better to do single books because do 3 in a row is going to be lots of spoilers.
It's a lot.
But, but for anyone who's watching, who's tuned in, thank you so much, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.
Thanks all. Good to see you, everyone.
I don't even know where to end the stream. Anyway. Thanks, guys.
Bye, everybody.
Wait, hold the pose. Hold the pose.